Ready?
For the last talk of the day, we have Big Chicken and Baby Bird, also known as Z, Kam and Power, coming from Austin, Texas, to talk about their show Familiar.
Yeah, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Nat. This is Z. Um, we've been collaborating together since 2015 now. Several of the works in this show are directly collaborative. We paint side by side, and then others are kind of all in the same universe that we've collaborated on over time.
My name is Z, and I'm originally from Hong Kong, so it's a very international city, and a lot of different cultures would like collide together and create something that's like kind of opposite, but at the same time, like they also live in harmony. So it's like contradictory, but they live together. So that's what informs a lot of my imagery and symbolisms. And in terms of color palette, I am informed by the way Hong Kong looks. There's a lot of neon lights and nightlife. And my parents actually worked at a nightclub when I was little, and they bring me to work sometimes. I don't know why, but and so it's like bright colors existing like in the urban city, but at the same time, it's also like dirty looking in a way. So yeah, like opposite, but like the same thing. You want to talk about your inspiration?
Yeah. So currently, I'm a tattooer. I've been at it since say 2020. COVID kind of made that weird. But a lot of my color choices are influenced by tattooing at this point. I use a more limited palette, although I will kind of like when I'm working with Z, we'll get a little more color going on because how can I not? And my background growing up, my family is really into like the car scene, like hot rod shows, NASCAR. So I've always been drawn to like that like midnight neon color palette. In addition to my family has like a background in plants. I worked with plants for 5 years before becoming a tattooer, so kind of getting an appreciation for like the natural world, but then we kind of apply the more like neon urban colors to nature. And a lot of the pieces, I mean, most of the creatures are set in the garden. Kind of a reference to the Renaissance garden. They're the monsters in the garden. We deal a lot with like taking the grotesque, like what would have been marginalia and decoration, like in old manuscripts, and putting those at the forefront. That's really the focus of a lot of the paintings that we've been making in the past few years.
Yeah, so like, going back a little bit on the reference on like Renaissance garden and the grotesque. Grotesque are like little monsters that decorate like margins and manuscripts, and they exist in like different cultures, but mostly like we're looking at like bestiary from like European tradition, but we also obviously reference a lot of different creatures from different cultural mythologies. So yeah, what else?
And through collaboration, originally when we started collaborating, we'd kind of play a game of Exquisite Corpse, pass a drawing back and forth, and we ended up coming up with these chimera creatures, which is like a pretty natural like result of that process, but also at this point represents the collaborative process itself. And they're really fun to create and dress up and like express these themes through. But the chimera has definitely been like at the center of the work we've been making together pretty much since we did our first like painting show together. We originally started out with some sculptures together, but then we realized we kind of wanted to paint in the same direction, and we've just been like trading off symbols, imagery since then.
Yeah, and like originally, I think we just want to drive away. We want figures, but we want to drive away from just doing feminine figures that are objectifying of the female body. And so, like, I think monsters took the place of like the inner animal. That's really corny, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially in like the sphinxes are one of our most common chimeras in the work that I'm doing as well. Like the image of like the feminine form, but placed on like a creature that could harm you, but is still posed in a way to be appealing to the gaze, but still has claws. That's important to me. Yeah, dangerous but attractive.
You want to talk about feminine rage?
I mean, that's basically it. It's like, again, representing these like feminine figures that look like angry wild animals, but are kind of placed in these more like garden settings. And we both use like pattern and the decoration in our work. Recently, I've been kind of visiting more of the like garden gate inspired things from walking around like in suburbs and in cities and seeing kind of like the repetitive patterns on garden gates, which at this point, gardens are not the prime goal of the yard, which I am sad for, but just kind of incorporating that in. So it looks more ornamental, but still harkens back to that like suburban garden gate within which this feminine creature is contained or exploring.
Yeah, so like with the garden, I think we can talk about the way it's like a play set, the way we make our compositions. It's like two little girls playing, like imagining a world for the creatures that are our toys to like exist within. So that's like the most simplistic way to like interpret that.
Yeah, taking the marginalia and making sure they got water and food and plants and an environment. But they still are like monsters, and it's giving these monsters a space to kind of exist on their own. In previous work, I know we talked about like we were specifically aiming for making like queer folk art and creating these like mythologies that don't really exist, but we want to like go back and kind of create that pathway, those stories.
For me, it's not so much about like a exact narrative.
Yeah.
Because like mythologies usually have like a beginning and middle, but like ours is just like it's just the way it looks that remind you of that idea rather than like giving you an exact mythology, personal or like external from our own selves. In terms of like the decorative element, I do want to talk about that a little bit. Like you reference a lot of suburbs. I reference a lot of different ornamental patterns from like different cultures. I look at a lot of reference books, different patterns. They're not necessarily always Chinese, which is like what I am, but just like kind of mixing and matching because historically a lot of cultures do exchange their ideas and it's not like separated and within clean boxes. And so I do use that a lot to think about mixing and matching different patterns and structure. Yeah, structure of decoration because like different styles denote different cultures. Sometimes you look at a pattern, you're like, oh, I kind of know like where that comes from, but like I'm trying to mix and match to create a new thing so that it looks familiar to you, but at the same time, like a new foreign thing has been birthed from mixing them in a tasteful way.
Right. Which, especially with me working in tattooing, like I mostly focus on American traditional, which is like inextricably linked with like, I mean, American traditional is basically just a lot of elements stolen from like Japanese traditional, and like there's just so many different sources taken from like advertising, illustration, and it's all kind of put together. All these cultures are kind of mashed into what American traditional is, which I mean, yeah, it's
cultures evolve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They kind of like intersect and come together and influence imagery in that genre.
Is there anything else we're missing?
Let me look at my list.
I looked at the list.
We didn't talk about like lowbrow and decoration. I mean, back to kind of like the arts and crafts movement and decoration, like taking those motifs that people like are drawn to because they're beautiful, and then kind of reapplying them in like the fine art context.
Yeah, like the way I would look at it is like it already happens, right? If you walk into Target or Marshalls, you try to buy some home decor for your house, it's like you can kind of tell they're referencing something, a certain style sometimes. So like the masses is already smart enough to recognize what is beautiful and what they want to pay money for. So like we're doing that in a way where we actually study where those patterns and ornamentation comes from, and then like we're trying to honor them in a way with our own craftsmanship and not just like taking something and like dumbing it down and like not telling you where it's from or not acknowledging that.
Yeah, we're trying to elevate it, but acknowledge that a lot of it is still from like the decoration, fine art, or decoration, arts and crafts movement, different cultures, and then like the lowbrow aspect of it too. I mean, I'm a tattooer, like that's still pretty lowbrow, but it's fun to try to bridge the gap between my work like this and then my tattoo work. But they do go together somehow. And I guess we can also talk about like which pieces are specifically direct collaboration. So these three on the middle on this wall, we painted simultaneously and planned simultaneously. And then throughout the room, we have our individual pieces. But like this one is also not collaborative on each individual piece, but like the composition is collaborative. We're just kind of working in the same universe and trying to bring together what we're both working with.
Yeah, that's definitely like call and response to, I would make a piece and then that might want to like respond to what's inside that composition. Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah, the collaboration is very rewarding, and you end up with I don't know, some really cool reactions and just pieces that we've traded back and forth, I feel like, over the years that have developed into what they are now.
Yeah, and obviously techniques also is something we would trade.
Oh yeah, technique, substrate. We've worked on some weird substrates over the years, but at this point, we're working on panel, and then we found a way to like mount paper on them so that we're getting the most out of like our paint, because the color is very important to us. Working on paper lets the pigments that we're using really like radiate more. And I'm glad that we've had success with that, because it took us a while to get there.
And we started using paper because tattooers would.
It's the paper that I use for my tattoo flash. It's like hot press watercolor paper.
Before iPad.
Before iPad, yes.
Yeah.
Now we have both. Thank God. Yeah, if anyone has any specific questions on process, substance of the paintings, or yeah.
Hi, it's me again.
I'm gonna move closer because I can't hear that well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to speak up a little bit too. So question, because I'm familiar with how do you pronounce your name?
Z, like the
Z.
letter Z.
Okay, so Z's work. I have a lot of pieces from like, I was really inspired by how you had like a macaroni like dreamscape in like a lot of your pieces.
You were there for the macaroni days.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were a part of that, but I really love how y'all's vision and collaboration has come together. And I don't know, every time I see you come up with a new piece or like with your growth on Instagram or like at little pop-up shops, I like this one here particularly, I can see just your skills like really coming out. And I distinctly with the color and like the saturation of the color, I guess you kind of already answered the question with using paper on it, because I was really curious about that. But I guess one of the things that really kind of stuck with me is that you used to have like a lot more of like the sculpturous muse. It kind of like mixed in with like a bathhouse kind of scene or so. And like the showcase of this one is familiar. So I wanted to know like what was the process to kind of bring more of, and you may have answered it, but a little bit more about like how you see yourself kind of going with the more naturistic, animalistic side of yourself and expressing that through this exhibition.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the mic, but I feel like it's all developing.
Expressing the animalistic side, like, can we elaborate on that part of the?
So like, whenever I was seeing your pieces, and like I said, because I had that comparison for seeing the pieces that were like, okay, because I would see myself in like the bathhouse scenes with the macaroni dreams. I read one of your like little lines, like the sticky dreams, and so they just really connected with me about how, okay, as a queer Asian woman, I can see myself as this muse. And now I guess like from thinking that point of view and like kind of transferring it, I'm like, okay, like I feel like this is one a lot more like mystical and magical. So is that like getting more in tune with yourself and like letting go of like exhibitions or like limitations on your creativity and like how you view yourself, and is that expressed through like the use of familiars and animals a lot more, like the lions and everything too?
Yeah, I think there's definitely that. I still use my face. Like, I mean, I guess like in the macaroni era, I didn't use my face because I directly didn't want to use my face. I didn't want to objectify myself in an image. And so, but now I would use my face. My face is right there. And like, I guess Nat has like her face, but like it's like stylized.
Everything's
So yeah, we brought faces back. We brought our own faces back. So we do see ourselves in these spaces.
Because the macaroni was like the simplified figure, right?
Yeah,
And like the faceless.
I'll explain the macaroni a little bit. Macaroni is like basically the most simplistic version of like a human body, a figure, because it has two holes, and that's what we are. We're just a tube, like when it comes down to it. So like they're just like a humorous interpretation of the human figure. Yeah. So I had replaced that, but like yeah, now we're like bringing figures back. I don't know. I feel like things don't have to have a definite answer. Like yes, like when we use figures, they are prone to being objectified, but at the same time, so does that mean we just don't use figures anymore? So there's definitely a maturation of like thought process in there. It's like things are not just either or. Like yeah, so yes, you're right. It is about like growth and not limiting oneself to like a certain expression. So yeah.
I think this is the first show we've done without a macaroni.
Yeah, the first show we did have macaroni, and we had a lot of headless creature, which is like
Still
macaroni with legs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I want to address the why the pieces are so vibrant. We definitely use fluorescent color, And scientifically, fluorescent color reflect I don't know how many times more light than regular colors, and that's why they do reflect more light, especially if you put it under sunlight because they're reflecting UV light. Yeah. So it's not just about the paper.
Hey, Z and Nat. I'm disappointed I wasn't here for the macaroni era. But my question is more of, could you elaborate? Well, I guess there's two questions. One, could you guys elaborate more, maybe individually, on what the process is like from idea to this? Like, where do you spend the most time? Where's maybe the most interesting, or just your experience with the process side of it? And then two, I'm interested in like, where's the friction in the collaboration?
Where's the what?
The friction, like the parts
Oh.
where like you guys don't agree, or like you guys start fighting.
It's
You
mostly
know?
like,
We don't really
can
fight.
we make this pink? And then Z's like, no, this color looks better. I'm like, then they mix it, and I'm like, it does look better. Okay. That's what. And going a lot of the process, once we're actually painting, like Z will mix colors, I'll lay in big areas, and then we'll kind of trade off going in and doing texture and detail. But the actual our drawing process has changed a little bit. I feel like at this point we're comfortable enough working with each other to where we're not like, we don't have to pass the paper back side by side and get an okay. It's just like when we were passing this one back and forth, initially I had like a different headpiece, and Z was like, all right, I want a headpiece on there now, but can we change it to like these gems in this shape? I was like, yeah, that makes sense with the bowls around it too, because we had already finished those pieces.
Yeah, I don't know what you look at. I look at a lot of like European paintings, right? Like I look at it for composition, but I also have been looking at a lot of illustrations and for graphic design. Like for example, with the bulls, that's definitely something I pulled from an Art Deco illustration, black and white illustration. Yeah. You want to talk about what you look at in terms of like compositional?
In terms of compositional, I mean, again, I'm pretty like soaked in the tack culture now. Looking at a lot of that and the sources where that comes from, which is a lot of like illustrative advertising, the arrangement of that. Also looking at old tapestry work, which I think has a similar composition to what Z is looking at. So it ends up working out pretty well that we're looking at things that are composed similarly, but coming from different like directions or cultures. So the compositions work out, but there's like differences in there to make it interesting when we start putting our own like take on it.
Oh, and murals.
What about the murals?
Like in Italian tradition, like people paint murals in their house.
Oh yeah, like the mosaics and the frescoes and such.
Yeah,
of
like
Pompeii.
pretend like your house look out
Yeah.
to like a
Yeah, the like villa paintings in like Pompeii and
yeah.
ancient Italy and stuff. Definitely that perspective has influenced arranging some of the architecture in these.
Because they do a lot of faux perspective, which
Yeah.
is like what we do as well. It's like they would like in the house they would like paint a pillar rather than have an actual pillar.
And then a garden scene behind it instead of an actual garden.
Yeah.
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 More specifically, how do you get to the point where like you're like, all right, we're gonna do this. Like I like this, we're gonna do this. And I don't know how to say that more specifically. Like
why we're not picky.
well, that's an answer too. Like
Yeah, because we're not picky.
I think at this
Okay,
point,
cool.
like we trust each other enough to know like when something is too much or not enough, or to just keep adding in detail. Early on, I guess it would be more like we'd have an entire sheet where we had drawn a bunch of chimeras together, and we kind of picked and choose like our 3 or 4 favorite ones that we both thought were the most successful. And that was us kind of figuring out like what the other person expected and like what worked well for collaborative work. And in these, like, I mean, these are also 2 very different styles of collaborative painting that we've done before. Like the bulls are
graphic.
Yeah, the bulls are more graphic, but Z like designed the focal point, and then I went around and did detail, which usually Z is the detail master here,
Yeah.
but those are kind of flipped. And then this one, we kind of composed everything together. Like Z focused on the creature, and then I added in like markings and the background, the gates, and then we figure out color together. It's one of those things that I feel like we do pretty fluidly. Again, just because we kind of like have an expectation for one another of like what our color palettes look like, what our creatures look like, and like the quality that we're going for.
Yeah, and also I feel like you have a more like set style with your tattoo work, and so like I already know what I'm expecting.
Yeah.
Versus like I'm the one that would like do weird stuff.
Yeah, as you'll be like, all right, we're doing what was something that surprised me this time? And nothing surprises me anymore. I was excited for the swan. I was like, oh yeah, black swan. All right.
Well, she has a weird face though.
She does have a weird face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like my eyes, but also like just your hair.
I mean, she has red hair. Yeah.
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 Everything's a self-portrait, whether it looks like it or not.
Yeah. And I think like in terms of like collaborative process, how like you can get an agreement with your partner if you're looking for that kind of. I would say like if you can back up like with words why you are picking something rather than just I just like the way it looks like, because usually if you can explain something in a way that makes sense, the other person, you know, if it makes sense, they'll go with it, you know. I feel like, right?
Yeah, if you can justify it.
Yeah.
In
but
like
I think
the
with
universe.
us, we just feel like it looks great, then it's fine, right? Yeah. But we also know where we're coming from already in terms of like a visual research.
Right, we know each
information,
other's
yeah.
like visual symbol language at this point.
Yeah.
Right, cool. Any other questions?
You guys have a favorite piece?
Ooh, I don't know. I like our big collaborative one, and then I really like how this wall turned out. Like seeing that installed, I was like, yes, that worked. Those all work together. What about you? And Z's horses. That's my favorite one of Z's.
I like this one because like you use like Christmas color, but it doesn't look like Christmas, and that's always.
Yeah, it's neon
does.
post-Christmas,
Yeah.
Christmas garbage.
But I also think the space in this one is better because it recedes in a really smart way.
Yeah, I like how that one.
Yeah,
I like
it's
the space in
clever.
that one. Thanks.
What's the story behind Big Chicken and Baby Bird?
College nicknames for each other.
Yeah.
I think Z.
Well, Baby Bert was a nickname for you.
Yeah, you gave that
And
to
then we
me.
have to come up with like another one that like.
In our first collaborative show, you decided we figured out Big Chicken because you did a large embroidery piece that said Big Chicken.
Did it say
right?
Big Chicken?
You
on
told
it?
me that it did. It wasn't in a language I can
No,
read.
I don't think it said Big Chicken on it.
What did it say then?
It just looked like a chicken. It didn't
Oh,
say Big
okay.
Chicken on
All
it.
right. What did
Yeah.
it say?
It just says pawn. Like it's a pawn shop
Oh, okay,
sign.
okay.
Yeah, it's based on like the traditional pawn shop sign in Hong Kong. It's like a very Chinese looking kind of. It's supposed to represent like it's supposed to look like a bat because a bat. I know it's like not COVID bats.
Oh my god.
But like it's what homonyms
Okay.
with like the word blast, and that's why bats are supposed to be like good, like
Oh,
a
I
good
didn't know
omen
that. That's
in
cool.
Chinese, even though they're obviously not a good omen.
But the sign looked like a cute chicken. And
Yeah.
Z like startled me in college and was like, "You act like a baby bird, like afraid." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, well I'm the baby bird and you're the big chicken."
Yeah.
But we trade sometimes.
And also, I like the name because like it sounds like something that's like badly translated from Chinese. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just going off a vibe.
Yeah. It almost rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Just enough.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious on these back two pieces. You said you kind of borrowed sometimes from other cultures or got inspired by other cultures. To me, I mean, I'm from a Mexican background, but these two look like a kind of like alebrije. They're Mexican indigenous kind of like animals and colors. I was just kind of curious if where you were inspired from.
Are you
or if-
talking about the middle piece or this piece?
Oh, I guess more this piece, the
The
leopard
middle?
with the wings.
Okay.
That one kind of reminds me a lot of like Mexican indigenous art culture. I was just kind of curious if there was something in your culture that kind of made you fix upon that, or if it was from that.
I think the leopard is like pretty common.
Yeah, I
and,
think
like
it's pretty
they're
common.
celebrated pretty,
Yeah.
like across the world. Because they just look really special with the type of markings. Because domestic cats don't have dots; they have stripes, right? Like,
Mhm.
but like yeah, in Chinese culture, I think they represent like wealth. We
Mhm.
actually call them money leopards.
Mhm.
And I
Okay.
definitely try to like give her like an orange yellow tone to like make it look like she's glowing, like golden.
Mm.
But yeah, I do look at a lot of I feel I'm gonna say it wrong, like those sculptures. Is it Oaxaca or Oaxacana? I forgot.
Which one?
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
Oaxaca. Yeah,
Yes.
Oaxaca.
So they have like a lot of like
Yeah, they have
patterns
a
and
lot of-
dots painted on them. I feel like the way I made the dots density definitely kind of looked like that, right?
Yeah, I really like
Yeah.
it.
Thank you. Yeah. And I guess I'll talk about this one too because I like them. Horses. We're horse girls. So like I looked at a lot of jousting plates as in like medieval prints. Or well, they're not medieval. I don't think they can make prints back then. I don't know what time period, but they're depicting like jousting outfits for horses. And like so I was looking at a lot of those to come up with like the cape and the horns and they would definitely blind the horses so they're like they don't run off when like two guys with giant sticks are running at each other on the horse. So yeah, like I thought those were interesting. Like horses with no eyes running at each other. And this one is also like based on like armor. Kind of like remind me a little bit of like Geiger, like the guy who created the art concepts for the Alien movie franchise. So this is a Geiger horse, except he's pink rather than black and gray. But also like made it more ornamental, like swirly rather than like sci-fi. Yeah, yeah. He's a robot horse. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.